Chapter 11. The lateen-rigged ship Mara rolled at her mooring, lifted by the gentle swells of the Kattegat Strait. Tizir crouched beneath the tent pitched on her deck, attentive to his sleeping companions. The after-effects of the poppy extract left him feeling queasy, and the constant motion of the ship intensified his discomfort. Too alert to sleep, Tizir slipped from the tent. The night sky hovered, dark as pitch, broken only by the pinpoint lights of stars. Strung on pegs, unlit lanterns banged against the bulwark. Tizir wandered to the taffrail and looked out over the black waves which lapped the hull. Awed by the unbridled power of the sea, he contemplated the events which had brought them to Amara. Turned away by the innkeeper in Kalmar, Tizir, Erdmore, and Moonbear sought quarters elsewhere. The double-rigged lateen ferryboat seemed the ideal place. An encampment on its deck assured them that the ship would not sail without them, and surely the Baron's guards would never think to search Amara 2 days before her casting off. Tizir balanced a foot on the gunwale, recalling his dealings with the sunburned captain. The crude lodgings had cost him a penwerger, 5 times the price of crossing for Tizir and his friends, but money meant little to the city-bred thief, especially when it was gained by robbery, and a closer peek at the contents of Mordath's purse revealed 9 more penwerger, several smaller Scandinavian gold pieces, and scores of tiny silver and copper ducats. The strangeness of Tizir's surroundings incited his curiosity. The captain's firm insistence that Tizir and his companions remain on the upper deck and out of the way of the crew served only to further pique Tizir's interest. Turning, he skirted the shadowed bulk of the dinghy lashed to the bow and trotted aft. The mainmast jutted skyward, the black cross-hatching of its riggings blurred by night. Spurred by a childish urge, Tizir caught hold of the wood. It was an easy climb to the boom. He continued up the mast with a constant, rapid rhythm. He ducked beneath the shroud lines and shinned upward until the creak of the yard warned him he had nearly reached the masthead. A cold northern breeze, wet with sea air, wound through the lines. Chilled despite the late summer season, Tizir glanced downward. His position allowed a wide view of the deck. The 2 sailors who would serve as night crew during the voyage lounged on the quarterdeck. The wind fanned smoke from an oil lamp before them, splotching the deck with shadows. Their voices wafted clearly to Tizir, but their accents so badly mingled the hybrid language he could not understand their conversation. Amidships, a canvas sheet covered the sandpit where the crew fixed their meals, protecting the firewood and provisions from rain. Beyond it, the yawning mouth of the hatchway led into the darkness below the deck. Bored with his bird's-eye view of the lateen, Tizir scurried down the mast. Shying into the shadows beyond the sailor's light, he crept to the hatchway. A sudden swell jolted Tizir forward, nearly hurling him into the opening. Legs widely braced, he waited until Amara settled back into her anchorage, then ran down the companion ladder into the hold. The dim outline of baled cargo filled most of the lower deck. Tizir stood while his eyes adjusted to the gloom, listening to the harried scramble of rat's claws between crates. The glow from the lantern and stray beams of moonlight brightened the hold enough to reveal the bulkheads of the fore and aft cabins. From an earlier conversation, Tizir knew the captain occupied the compartment in the stern. He stepped around the bilge hatch and wandered forward. Everything below deck seemed as ordinary as above, and Tizir felt foolish over defying the captain's orders to stay above deck. But the captain's gritty warning was merely the latest of many challenges Tizir could not ignore. 2 mahogany doors broke the solid line of the forward bulkhead. Silently, Tizir walked to the leftmost door. He seized the handle and pulled. It resisted. Pale light from within outlined the keyhole, but Tizir heard no noise to indicate a human presence. Intrigued by a locked door aboard Amara, he rummaged through his pocket for Mordath's knife. The ivory hilt felt smooth against Tizir's callous palm. He knelt before the key slit, instantly realizing the blade would never fit. Returning the dagger to his pocket, he considered. Never in the course of his thefts had he been stymied by a simple lock, but always before he had carried the proper tools for such a job. Thwarted, but not defeated, Tizir turned his attention to the other door. This one opened easily to his touch. The panel swung inward to reveal a compartment lined with chests. Folded canvas occupied the center of the room, smelling of mildew. An open locker held coiled lines. Sailors' personals, Tizir guessed. He was turning to leave when a glint of silver from the locker caught his eye. 2 large sewing needles nestled among the ropes. Perfect. Tizir pocketed one, abandoned the room, and closed the door behind him. Back in the central confines of the hold, Tazir poised before the locked door. Anticipation chased sleep from his thoughts. He brandished the needle, suddenly uncertain. Obviously, Amara's captain keeps something here he wants unseen. I'm risking my life involving myself in things which are none of my affair. Yet, like the lions which guarded Agarin's temple, and the challenge of robbing Mordath in the tavern in Weneth, Tazir found himself unable to resist the allure of the forbidden. Grimly, quietly, he set to work. The needle fit into the keyhole sideways. Tazir's sensitive fingers felt the metal slide across the workings. He redirected its tip, easing it into the appropriate groove of the lock. Satisfied with this positioning, he pinned it in place with his thumb and turned the end in his other hand a full circle. The maneuver was soundless. Tazir flipped the latch. It creaked. The panel held. Tazir ducked behind a crate, heart pounding. After several seconds, when no one responded to the noise, he approached the door again. He repeated his attempt with the needle. This time, the door moved freely. Tazir stared into a cabin dimly lit by an oil lamp which swung from a gimbal ring overhead. A wooden chair stood flush with the left front corner. A water basin on its seat flashed the reflected light of the tavern. A straw-covered berth lined the opposite side of the room. When Tazir's eyes had adjusted to the sudden presence of light, he realized he too was being studied. A woman occupied the berth, her legs a pale shadow in the gloom. Her flaxen hair hung functionally short. Her mocking blue gaze traced Tazir's figure in the doorway, but her expression seemed friendly. She spoke in a low voice, her accent an enchanting sing-song. "Are you clumsy, or just slow? How long does it take you to open a lock?" Tazir gawked, instantly recognizing her as the woman who had twice appeared in his dreams. Aware he could no longer run, he stepped into the room. He responded in the same half-serious manner, but shock drained his words of confidence. "It takes longer when you don't have a key." He displayed the sewing needle. The woman blinked in surprise. Closer, Tazir found features with a simple beauty. Golden ringlets framed an oval visage with high dimpled cheeks. A flannel nightshirt covered her thin frame. Her eyes darted, alert with mischief, and Tazir suspected they missed little. "You're no sailor." She rose from the berth. Casually she stretched, arching her back into a delicate curve. Tazir watched with interest. The woman moved with an acrobat's grace. At least for the moment, she seemed unlikely to reveal his presence to the captain. "And you're no willing passenger. Why does the captain keep you locked in your cabin?" "I'm expensive cargo." She leaned toward Tazir, examining him in the spinning light. "My name's Astrid. Thanks for rescuing me." Abruptly, she dodged past him and ran for the door. Caught off guard, Tazir scrambled after her. He dove for Astrid's retreating form. He crashed into her legs, sprawling her to the deck. She twisted. Her feet pounded Tazir's chest. Her fingernails slashed his face. Swearing silently, Tazir seized her arm, spun her, and hoisted her to her feet. He dragged her, struggling, back to the room. Carefully, Tazir closed the door. "You stupid wench! I'm in enough trouble sneaking about the ship. Risking myself is one matter, but I won't gamble my friends' lives by allowing a stranger to escape." Tazir knew the search which might follow Astrid's disappearance would delay the voyage long enough for Collinsburg's guardsmen to reach Kalmar port, and if Amara's captain discovered that Tazir had released her, the consequences to him and his companions might prove a heavy toll. The deck lurched. Instinctively, Tazir clutched Astrid tighter. She grasped the berth, and they both managed to remain upright. Tazir felt the woman trembling beneath his grip. Abruptly, he realized she was shorter and slighter than himself. He pushed her to the straw. "Now, why did you do that? I don't think much of the captain holding a woman against her will. I'll help you if I can, but not if you're going to endanger me and my companions every time I turn my back." He glared, but sympathy robbed his gesture of purpose. "My friends call me Shadow." Astrid scowled and pulled away. "So what do people who don't care much for you call you?" Despite Astrid's sullen rage, her closeness filled Tazir with desire. He had known her only a few short moments, but for some reason he could not explain, he wanted her to like him. Her resemblance to the woman of his vision seemed eerily unnatural. "I really don't know. I try not to get near enough for them to call me anything." Astrid met the joke with rancorous silence. Tazir shifted awkwardly. "Listen, Astrid. My friends and I leave the ship in Sweden. I promise I'll free you by then, if not sooner. I just can't take the risk until we're out of Kalmar port." To Tazir's relief, Astrid turned back to face him. A smile made her features shine. She clasped his hands. In the slash of lantern light, Tizir noticed that a scar puckered the soft white skin of her knuckles in the unmistakable pattern of a claw. To Tizir's surprise, his mood became protectively angry. Did someone hurt you? Hurt me? Only you. Why? Her gaze followed Tizir's stare. She laughed. That's the dragon mark. The what? Tizir went defensive. The blemish looked like a two-dimensional version of the tip of Mordath's staff. Whenever a person destined to become dragon rank reaches late childhood or adolescence, the symbol appears. Her fingers dragged across Tizir's knee seductively. She continued, apparently misinterpreting his concern. It doesn't hurt, really. It only means I have the power to learn magic. Tizir felt betrayed. You're a witch? Sorceress, Astrid corrected. And you're a burglar. You broke into my room. I don't hold that against you. Astrid's words forced Tizir to realize he was judging her by his experiences with Mordath. I'm sorry, he said sincerely. He recalled Mordath's disappearances in the inn. But if you have magical powers, how can the captain keep you confined? I merely said I was dragon rank. I don't have any spells, at least not now. My powers have been stolen from me. How? Asked Tizir, truly interested. Astrid sighed. Her face went soft with sorrow. It's a long story, and you'd best leave before the sailors come to check on me. With strange regret, Tizir headed for the door. His fingers enwrapped the latch. Shadow? Astrid's voice sounded sweet and musical. You will come back? I promise. He exited, pausing just long enough to snap the lock closed with his sewing needle. The trip back to the tent on the upper deck proceeded in a wheel of unfamiliar emotion. Tizir wanted to see Astrid again. Of that he felt certain, but his reasons seemed less clear. Idly he wondered if she had thrown some sort of spell over him. He discarded the thought almost instantly. If so, she would have been stupid to reveal herself as a sorceress, and she surely could have gotten me to release her. Tizir mounted the companionway to the upper deck, still deep in contemplation. He supposed it was Astrid's demeanor which attracted him so strongly, her daring attempt at escape, the quick, bold agility which characterized her movements, the impish glimmer in her eyes which told him she could understand his ongoing quests to master the impossible. He found her size an additional positive feature. Her dream appearances in his mind only made him certain that Astrid was born to be his, although he suspected that his long journey with only male companionship contributed somewhat to her desirability. Tizir paused at the tent opening and watched one of the sailors head toward the hatchway, his lantern dispersing the darkness in a broad circle. Astrid's timing had saved Tizir from explaining his presence in the hold. He watched the light funnel through the companionway, then turned and silently entered the tent. Moonbear sprawled beneath the canvas, his breathing deep and even. Beside him, Ardmore's blanket lay, spread neatly across the deck. The woodsman was gone. Air caught in Tizir's throat. Sudden sweat spangled his forehead. He knelt beside Moonbear. The barbarian opened one eye, grunted a greeting, and turned to his other side. Where's Ardmore? Tizir whispered. Moonbear kept his back to Tizir. He went on shore. He said he was looking for someone. Rage tore through Tizir. Ardmore should never have left Moonbear alone. Together we can stand against the guards or Mordath. Separated, Mordath could take any of us with a simple spell. Astrid forgotten for the moment, Tizir flopped to Ardmore's bedding. Gradually, his anger faded, and he dropped into a weary sleep. Tizir awakened in the false prolongation of night supplied by the tent. He was alone. Voices wafted along the deck. The captain's rasping accent was unmistakable. Water stayed unusual calm. The Catagut's a monster most times. Most captains won't chance her. That's why my few trips a year's so profitable. Tizir heard the man spit. Me and them crazy Viking pirates up yours the only ones who will brave her. No offense, of course. Amusement colored Moonbear's reply. None taken. Tizir yawned, pressed wrinkles from his clothing, and trotted out onto the deck. The sun hung well above the horizon, blazing like torchlight. Smoke trickled from the sandpit amidships. Even from a distance, Tizir could see half a dozen figures before the cooking pit. The smell of salt and fish twined over the deck, reminding Tizir he had not eaten the previous evening. Tizir quickened his pace. Nearer he recognized the crew, most of whom had spent the night in Kalmar's inn. The captain sat on one side with Moonbear, apparently pleased with his new audience. Course, Ameris' captain continued. I spends half the year ice-locked in the harbor. He broke off as Tizir approached. Well, here's your little friend. Slept a good dawn away. Morning, Shadow. Hungry? Nodding, Tizir sat cross-legged beside Moonbear. The captain rose, went to the cooking pot, and ladled chowder into a wooden bowl. Tizir seized the time his short absence allowed. Has Erdmore returned? No. Moonbear watched the captain stride to the rhythm of the swells. Amara's captain passed a steaming bowl and a short wooden spoon to Tizir. Ever eaten cod chowder? Never, Tizir admitted. He shoveled some into his mouth. It tasted unfamiliar but pleasant. It's good, Tizir said around the mouthful. The captain beamed. Wishing to capitalize on the seaman's mood, Tizir phrased his query delicately. Last night in the tavern, I heard one of your crewmen mumble something about a woman on board. Now, I don't believe in those mother stories, but I thought you seamen felt the presence of a woman on a ship as bad luck. The captain's expression went icy. The crow's feet around his eyes deepened. His gaze played over his crew. Which man spoke? Not wishing to implicate any man with his lie, Tizir continued. Please, Captain, if I had known my babbling might make trouble for the sailor, I'd have said nothing. The blame is all mine. I've developed a bad habit of listening to private conversations. The captain seems to accept the explanation easily. A gare's cursed storms. Least I knows to curb my tongue with you aboard. We've a missy in the hold. I's paid well to ship her, and weller to keep her presence secret. She's a Norsen, headed away far north to Mjolnir to become a king's bride. So Astrid's getting married? Disappointment sifted through Tizir's thoughts. The captain went on with his disclosure, apparently glad to pass the information. Small thing, pretty in her own ways, but not the sort men'd kill for. Well aware of Astrid's attractions, Tizir pressed further. Why do you keep her in the hold? The captain turned his attention to his chowder, as if bored by the subject of conversation. Strange things. Keeps telling my men we've made a mistake, but I's paid to take her to Mjolnir, and that's where she goes. Can't fathom why a missy'd fight against becoming a queen. Neither can I. Tizir pondered the thought, knowing precisely where to find the answer to such a question. Next time I visit Astrid, there will be explanations. But before Tizir could push the matter further, one of the sailors approached his captain. The crewman spoke in a rapid patter of Pidgin Scandinavian, intermingled with punctuated bursts of the Baronese tongue, and an unrecognizable language which matched his coarse accent. His swarthy features and the coiled black hair which covered his skin marked him as a foreigner. His tone was conversational, but the word Cullensburg sifted clearly from his broken speech. Tizir turned to Moonbear, hoping the barbarian would know enough of both languages for clarification. Moonbear did not disappoint Tizir. He told the captain an armed patrol camped last night, a half-day's walk outside of Kalmar. He paused, listening, then continued. They wear red and black uniforms. Kalmar's constabulary rode out to meet them, but they have not yet returned. Tizir drew a ragged breath. Impatiently, he waited until the sailor finished reporting to the captain and returned to his fellows. Pushed to quick action, Tizir did not trouble to hide his motives. Captain, can we sail today? Amara's captain studied Tizir from beneath beetled brows. Are you mad, son? The sails are furled. There's merchants still heading on. An early cast-off will cost me gold. Gold. Concerned for his friends' lives, Tizir was annoyed by the captain's obsession with money. He jabbed his fingers into his pocket and jerked free Mordath's purse without bothering to secure the string. The pouch flopped open in his hand, spilling its contents. Gold, silver, and copper fell like glimmering rain. A spray of coins scattered across the deck. Some rebounded from the hatch combing and the cooking pit. They settled on Amara's rolling deck. In the shocked silence which followed, Tizir's voice emerged unusually loud. Will that cover your losses? Amara's captain treated Tizir to an intensely unpleasant scrutiny. His gaze snapped to the coins which littered the otherwise spotless deck. Abruptly, he bellowed at the crew. Unfurl the sails. Fetch your companions from the tavern. We weighs anchor today. Without question, the sailors rushed to obey. The captain rounded on Tizir. Clean the mess, and don't dare tells me or the crew why's you been chased by soldiers. If I'm going to harbor fugitives, it'll be from ignorance. He turned on his heel and tromped down the quarterdeck. Erdmore returned on the dinghy which brought Amara's remaining crew, his buckskin slashed and stained. His hands looked sore with abrasions, his features drawn. Accepting a steadying hand from a sailor, he staggered to the deck and offered Tizir no explanations. Tizir waited until the sailor's footsteps faded, then confronted his companion. Where in Karanas hot as hell did you run off to in the middle of the night? Leave me alone, boy. Erdmore brushed past Tizir, headed for the tent. Tazir caught the woodsman's arm, his fury from the previous night blazing anew. You left Boombear alone and asleep. I need a better reason than that. Ardmore stared at the small fist which gripped his sleeve. His face went red with rising anger. Take your hand off me, child, before I remove it at the wrist. He whipped his sword from its sheath. Behind them, wind rattled through the riggings. The sailors' voices sounded distant. Tazir recalled how, 8 years ago, Blade had resented Tazir's presence in the street gang until the tiny thief physically challenged the muscled ruffian. The fight had never happened. Blade's newly gained respect made the two fast friends. Now, aware a display of raw courage would impress Ardmore more than words, Tazir rebelled against the aloofness which tainted all the woodman's dealings with him. He freed his own weapon, aware he could never hope to win such a battle. I'm 21, a Garen's blood, quit calling me child. Ardmore gave him a look vicious with scorn. You know what could kill you with a stroke. Tazir flinched, but he met the threat with brazen honesty. I've endangered my life for worse causes than Moonbear's safety. If you would really rather slay me than explain your whereabouts, I can accept that. He crouched, hoping he had not misjudged the woodsman. Ardmore's sword went lax in his grip. Rage fled from his features, leaving him looking old beyond his years. Shadow, I underestimated you. You've got a lot of fire for a Collins Bergen of your generation. Come along and I'll tell you what I've been doing. He replaced his sword. I assume Moonbear is in the tent. Without waiting for a reply, he strode forward. Tazir followed cautiously, his sinews still taut from anticipated combat. It had been a long time since anyone had praised his courage, and the words took on a special meaning when spoken by a man of Ardmore's war experience. He wondered who or what had left the woodsman in such a disheveled state, and infuriated him enough to draw steel against a companion. Ardmore and Tazir entered the tent where Moonbear waited, shielded from the clatter of the sailors checking lines and planking. The woodsman hurled his tattered frame down on his sleeping blanket. I went out looking for information about Mordath and his powers. His voice gained volume, and Tazir recognized the same ravenous anger which had driven Ardmore to pull the sword up on deck. I slogged through every scummy, disgusting, backwater dive in Kalmar. I tracked down every piece of human rat dung I thought might give me answers. I fought with foul, shit-stinking bandits and assassins so repulsive, I washed my knuckles after every punch. He ran a dirty hand over his abraded fingers. The only thing more rampant than filth was ignorance. I didn't learn a damned thing. He added as a growled afterthought, accursed thieves. Tazir cringed, feeling slightly insulted. You risked your life to get information about Mordath? Wearily, Ardmore stretched out on the blanket. He's coming back for us. We can't fight him effectively until we know what he can do. Agreed, chimed in Tazir, but there are better ways than battling street people and announcing your presence all over Kalmar. Get some rest. Tonight, I'll take you to someone who may have answers, and we won't even have to leave the ship. Despite fatigue, Ardmore seemed interested. There's someone on board who... Tazir silenced him with a wave. Hush, it's a secret. Now close your eyes. Ardmore's lids drooped shut. Within moments, he dropped into a deep slumber. Tazir and Moonbear headed to the deck. A second tent lay pitched beside their own, housing for the night crew. The remainder of the 8 sailors scurried purposefully about Amara, completing the last few tasks which would allow the ship to cast off a day earlier than planned. Tazir could see the aft sail already flying from the mizzenmast. Wide-legged in the bow, Amara's captain shouted, Weigh anchor! The clank of chain reverberated through Tazir's ears as the anchor rose from the ocean. Hoist the mast! 2 of the men hauled on the halyards. The yard rattled up the mast, unfurling the triangle of sail. The sailors looped the lines about their belaying pins and prepared to meet the captain's next command. Shorten sails! The canvas drew taut, and Amara skated from her anchorage on a starboard track. Aware he would spend much of the night awake with Astrid, Tazir tried to sleep through the afternoon and evening, but anticipation of seeing the sorceress and the novelty of sea travel denied him rest. At length, wearying of watching Ardmore dream, he joined Moonbear in the bow. Soon the pitch and roll of Amara's deck became familiar. Tazir stared at the white-capped swells which curled from the hull, his thoughts strangely full of Astrid. Dinner passed in light conversation. The haggard faces of Amara's captain and her crew revealed an effort which belied the smooth tacks and turns. As the sky darkened, Tazir practiced sword forms amidships, while the sailors prepared Amara for the night. The anchor sank to the seabed. The sails again hugged the boom, and all but the 2 night crew crawled into their tents to sleep. Tazir waited only until the men settled in before he led his companions down the hatchway into the hold. The cargo still occupied most of the area, now canvas-covered and strapped in place. Moonlight pinned luminous eyes until a rat scrambled out of sight beneath a tarp. Swiftly and silently, Tazir crept to the locked door of the forecabin. He snatched the mechanism open with a sewing needle and waited for his companions to catch up. When Ardmore and Moonbear came up beside him, Tazir turned the latch and pushed the door. The panel swung inward soundlessly. Before Tazir could step within, Astrid hurled herself into his arms and whispered greeting. "Shadow, Thor's justice, you did return." Tazir returned the embrace, feeling suddenly warm and excited. Reluctantly, he pulled free, ushered his friends into the room, and latched the door behind them. "Astrid, this is Moonbear and Ardmore." He indicated each in turn, then addressed the woodsman. "Astrid is dragon rank." "Is she now?" Ardmore looked deeply thoughtful. He crossed the room, removed the pan of washing water from the chair, and sat. "Would you be willing to answer some questions?" "Certainly," Astrid replied. She, Tazir, and Moonbear took seats on the berth. Astrid caught Tazir's hand and squeezed encouragingly. Suffocated with desire, Tazir felt awkward as a child. He scarcely heard Ardmore's question. What precisely is dragon rank? "It's a method of magic which draws upon the caster's life energy. Any person with the ability to call chaos and channel it for more than minor sorcery eventually becomes naturally marked with the dragon symbol." Astrid held out her right hand to display the claw-shaped scar. "Once it appears, the person can join the dragon rank school, if he hasn't already killed himself experimenting." She laughed. The sound held a sweetness which made Tazir giddy. "Killed himself?" Ardmore leaned forward. Astrid continued, her face shadow-streaked by the uneven swing of the lantern. "As I said, directing chaos costs life energy. The amount any spell drains depends upon the strength of the caster, the amount of power he's already spent, and how well he's practiced a chosen spell in the past. It's an inexact art. If the sorcerer taps his life energy too far, he dies." Ardmore wore a look of amused puzzlement. Astrid clarified. "Think of a sword spar. You don't know how much any particular strike will tax you before you make it, but well-rehearsed maneuvers fatigue you far less than wild slashes." Ardmore nodded his understanding. Tazir flushed, reminded of his own exhausting practices. Astrid went on. "The Dragon Rank School teaches us to expand our consciousness and endurance, gives us a place to try out sorceries, and supplies the basic information from which to attempt specific spells. Gaining strength consists of refining power, so the same spell takes less energy. The transport, which taps a quarter of my aura, might take only 1/16 or less for a diamond rank master." Tazir freed his damp hand from Astrid's grip and slid his arm behind her. Ardmore pressed further. "What's the significance of rank?" Astrid smiled with girlish allure, obviously aware of Tazir's unsubtle maneuver. "It's a symbol, arbitrarily represented by progressively more valuable gems. We gain ranks by mastering certain skills. A promotion usually requires several years, during which we must spend 11 months of every year on the school grounds. Otherwise, we sacrifice any chance for advancement." Her voice acquired a pained tone. "If I'm not released soon, my chance to regain my powers and continue my training will be forever lost." Tazir winced, aware her final pronouncement was directed at him. Ardmore returned the conversation to its original tack. "What's your rank?" "Jade." Tazir was startled. "The same as Mordath." "Would a sorcerer know his classmates?" "Not necessarily at early levels. We have a number of class ranks, but magic is a cruel and demanding mistress. We lose many lives to attempts at spells beyond the caster's strength. Others die of more natural causes such as illness or warfare. Remember, too, practice refined skills. Those who daily drain themselves to exhaustion become the most powerful, but the art is inexact. The slightest miscalculation may result in death." She paused, as if attempting to recall the original question. "The answer is yes. As a Jade rank, I know all 6 of my classmates." "Mordath," said Ardmore. Astrid glanced up as if slapped. Her voice went icy. "I know him." Ardmore grinned, displaying stained teeth. "What can he do?" Astrid scooted back against Tazir's arm. "Anything, like all trained dragon ranks. It's possible for any of us to attempt spells which no one else has ever chronicled. But the cost and power would be unknown, too great for anyone short of ruby rank to try." Her gaze flitted from Moonbear's unrevealing visage back to Ardmore. "He can do nearly anything, but he's most likely to use spells he's practiced. It eventually becomes necessary for every dragon rank to strictly limit his repertoire to make the spells he knows more powerful and less costly. In other words, if a sorcerer concentrated on a single spell, he could learn to cast it without hardly any expenditure of energy and as often as he needed it. Additionally, the same way some men have a natural leaning towards swords or bows or polearms, dragon ranks often have tendencies towards certain types of spells. Magics of a specific bent might be more easily learned, thereby costing less life energy. The strongest dragon ranks are usually ones with such a bias, who concentrate on their natural strengths. Mordath? Prompted Erdmore. Astrid patted back strands of yellow hair. Weather spells mostly. It gives him a nice balance of attack, defense, and general purpose. Of course, he knows the basic fillers, transport, weapon shields, and the like. Anything more you wish to know? That'll do. Erdmore grunted thoughtfully. He rose to leave. Wishing for more time with Astrid, Tazir pushed further. What's your specialty? Astrid shifted her weight against Tazir's shoulder. Summonings, she murmured. It's a hallmark bias. The dragon rank took its name from the ability to call forth dragons. They're not exactly normal fauna. Tazir pulled Astrid closer, too awash with desire to concern himself with her revelation. Still, needing more answers, he questioned further. But if dragon rank magic is based on life energy and you're alive, how come you've lost your powers? Because I'm an idiot. Astrid leaped to her feet and paced angrily. I was practicing a spell which concentrated all my ability into my rank stone. It probably sounds stupid to you, but the spell has its purposes. It keeps the caster untraceable. A dragon rank's worst enemy is a rival dragon rank. This spell protects me from discovery and a myriad of attacks which affect only another caster. She stopped abruptly and faced Tazir. Unfortunately, it also gave Mordath a chance to steal my rank stone and all my power. Without spells, I'm helpless against him. To keep me from tracking him with the help of another dragon rank, he booked my passage aboard Amara, ensuring I would be trapped until after our vacation time ended. I'd return too late for promotion. Tazir shook the sliding comma of hair from his eye, confused. Why would Mordath do that? Astrid resumed pacing. Because only one dragon rank can rise to Garnet each year. Her strides grew shorter and stiff with agitation. It's her only competitive rank, and the reason dragon ranks below Garnet are forbidden by law to slay one another. But Mordath knew the master would choose me over him. Erdmore mumbled something uninterpretable. What's that? Tazir encouraged the woodsman. Nothing, said Erdmore too quickly. Astrid reclined her seat, and her eyes pinned Erdmore. A jarring silence followed. Erdmore sprang to his feet. I said I meant nothing, and I think I have the information I came for. Thank you, Astrid. He walked to the door and opened it. Darkness crushed in, held at bay in the archway by lamplight. Moonbear also stood. We will meet you at the tent, he told Tazir. The two men departed, closing the door behind them. Tazir studied Astrid's slim figure in the glow from the lantern. Her movement had raised sweat, and the flannel of her nightshirt clung, revealing soft curves. Embarrassed to be caught staring, he spoke. If you're looking for Mordath, stay with us. He's chased us all the way from Wynneth. Without replying, Astrid wrapped her arms about Tazir. Breath caught in his throat. Warmth suffused him. She pulled his face to hers and kissed him with a fierce tenderness which shocked him. His fingers looped around her, and he grasped the fabric of her nightshirt. Passion goaded him onward, but the same heavy-handed morality which would not allow him to kill held him back. Astrid, I promise to free you. Nothing you do or don't do is going to make me break my vow. You don't have to pretend you like me. Pretend? Astrid breathed a long sigh of admission. All right, I confess. I was going to seduce you, then break free when I thought I had a chance. Tazir dropped his arms and turned away, suddenly shamed and disinterested. Astrid continued quickly. But I couldn't do that to you, Shadow. There's not a man on Midgard vile enough to deserve such deceit. Besides, this may sound like another one of my lies, but, she fidgeted, I really think I love you already. Tazir whirled back to Astrid, angered by her game. Just how stupid do you think I am? Astrid looked stricken. I can't blame you for distrusting me. I'm pulled to you. It's almost like dragon rank magic. We belong together, I'm certain of it. I only hope my desperation hasn't driven you away completely. Trusting his intuition, Tazir studied Astrid's face in the pale light of the lantern. The sincerity and concern in her features could not be feigned. I believe you, Astrid. Someone or something wants us together. I don't know how, and I don't know why, but I do know I've no wish to fight it. He caught her by the shoulders and drew her closer. Burying his face in her hair, he thrilled to the warm press of her breasts against him. They talked deep into the night, revealing secrets with an honest innocence Tazir had never before shared with another person. They chuckled over the difficulties of short people in a world of seeming giants. And, in the end, they made love with a greedy passion Tazir had never experienced with Shylar's girls. Then Tazir returned to his companions, only minutes before the night sailor left to check on Astrid.